If there's any recording of any device, would you please inform the chair? That's a device, that's a device. Roll call. Cindy's here.
Cindy Mall.
Joe Powers.
Dan Twart.
Jim Atkinson.
Kathy Green.
Dave Nixon, the chair.
And the board secretary, Jamie.
Okay. Any public comment? No public comment. Okay, moving on. Did you give it anybody get the agenda?
The agenda's on the chair right there.
If they didn't have their own.
Did you guys grab an agenda when you came in?
I have one from. Printed it off.
Oh, you printed it?
Yep.
Yep.
Can I steal yours?
Sure.
My
So
computer,
you may.
my computer's not functioning, so. All right.
Let me grab one of that.
Approval of the minutes of September 14th.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as presented from September 14th, 2017.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. Okay, under new business, the review of the financial records. So, here's where we start. Do you want to disseminate that information?
I thought that was here.
Well, it's
Which one did you want?
number 4A.
Is that what this is?
That's what that is.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. Okay. We took some time to go through the munis report and pull out some of the balances that were remaining. Some projects have been completed, and they just need to be closed out, so we need to officially agree to that. And then some of them are carrying balances that are over 5 years old, some from 2007 and 2008. So I'll pass this around. Everybody can take a look at these. Can you pass that to Cindy, please? Thank you. Dan?
Jim.
Regarding the first page, this reflects the projects that we know are completed. If there was anything I was unsure of, I reached out to the appropriate parties and asked them for confirmation that the projects were completed and that we could close out the account. In particular, the Brooks Free Library had over $1,000 left from their study, and I did talk to Ginny, and she said to close it out. Bikeways had over $7,000 between two different articles. They checked with town engineer, and they said we could close it. Cemetery said we could close it. I know the Sutphen land purchase was finished a couple years ago, and the other ones are small projects that were finished, Recreation and Chase Library. So all of these total about $13,000 that we're carrying on the books that we could, close out and put back into their respective buckets. Does anybody have any questions on what any of these articles were?
Joe.
So, not a question about what the articles were. But is this getting to item 5B? Is that the same thing, or is it two
I
different
think
topics?
it's I think the discussion is whether we're going to have some timeframes, like as a policy.
Okay, all right. Because the reason I ask, and I haven't seen it yet, but do we have a sense of what's available for the different categories? So these are balances that we can bring back to the appropriate town fund, right?
Right.
Not,
To answer your question, I'm unwilling to put into the public record the amounts we have available until we have a concrete idea from the finance director what those amounts are.
all right, so
Right now,
it's a work in progress?
It's a work in progress
Gotcha,
right now.
okay.
I mean, this is just a little drop in the bucket, but we're trying to
Yeah,
clean up
that's-
some of the accounts.
Sure, absolutely.
It's unnecessary
Yeah,
to
this
keep carrying
process
this.
makes sense, absolutely, yep. So, because I would have thought review financial records was where we're at for, yeah, so, okay. Thank you, you've answered it.
Okay. Any
Can
other-
I entertain a motion?
Could I just ask a question first?
Jim?
Kathy, while I'm sure it's fine with all of these departments to close these out, I was wondering if it would be helpful, just for the record, that we have something in writing from each?
Well, I've
And
been,
that could be as simple as an email?
I've been collecting the ones that responded to me.
Okay, great. Good, then you're one step ahead of me, Kathy. As
Always,
usual.
Jim.
As usual.
Good question.
I'll make a motion that,
Whoop,
No, this is the board right now. So,
Oh, okay. Well, didn't want to talk to.
no,
Nope, all right.
we're gonna do the board work first. Go ahead, Dan.
I'll make a motion that the unspent fund balances be returned to their designated funds.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Now we can have a discussion.
So does that motion mean both pages?
No, we're just
No,
talking about
just the-
page
Just,
one.
thank you.
Yes.
Bob?
Well, just a question as to whether Kathy's talked with Carol yet, the town accountant yet, about how her view of procedure. We've had different points of view in the past.
We did have a discussion of which we referenced a couple of letters that said that it was completely okay at the
We
discretion.
have the ability to do that, and it's a transactional function of the finance director. The board's given me access to the finance director on all these issues. So that was the first thing we discussed, and the answer is yes. But there has to be a vote from this board first.
But we do not need to have a rescinding article.
No, no, and that's from the attorney,
Mhm.
so. Okay, are we ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain. Okay, page 2. Now, I would imagine there's going to be some more discussion
Yeah.
regarding these.
Big numbers.
Yeah,
Yes, there
yeah,
are some big
yeah.
numbers. If you look at the total, the total's $334,000, okay? As you can see, some of these are from 2007, 2008, 2009.
Is that fiscal year? It's not calendar year, right? Those are fiscal years?
That's the year that the article
Articles
was
were-
Yeah, yep,
approved.
yep, all right.
I don't know how that fits fiscally. I don't know that stuff.
Yeah. Narrows the
Article
gap
was
at
approved
least.
at the town meeting?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so if you just want to take, as an applicant, the Brooks Academy Museum, they have an article from 2007 with over 26,000 remaining, 2008 with over 53,000 remaining, and 2014, which is not over the 5 years, but it's something worth looking at, their study, which they indicated at their last annual report that they were going to sort of think about not pursuing it, was 30,000. So that's a significant amount of money that's been sitting there for a really long time. And if you look at the requests in all these areas, and including the historical area, you know, I think the money could be used elsewhere. We've reached out to them.
Excuse me, Kathy, on the Brooks Academy itself, on these 3 articles, I'd like to hold them because I got a phone call from David Spitz, who apparently now is the chair, and he would like to come before the board to discuss the articles before we encumber the money,
He's the chair of Brooks Academy.
as I understand it, yes. So, but as far as the rec building in West Harwich, the storm windows, the Trails Committee, the bikeways, we can take action on that tonight.
What's the West Harwich building?
That's the,
Oh,
The old
the
school.
Yeah,
right.
okay.
um,
But I didn't go anywhere.
And may I ask what the housing authority, the 141?
Yeah, you may ask. Would it be okay to share what you had told me about that article?
Sure.
As from your recollection?
Sure.
Okay. I reached out to Bob because some of the 2008 actual applications are not available in the library, so it's kind of, we just kind of have a little bit of information. Bob said from his memory that this was an infrastructure article, which was a Jerry Loftus special, which we all know how he was very involved, to provide quick turnaround funds, kind of like the trust discussion, available for housing projects. Originally 200K, still has a current balance around 140K. The 140K had been approved for the 93-97 Route 28 project at one point, but when one of the important people, Bob Murray, died, it was canceled and it was never spent. Let's see. And it was a Harwich Housing Authority article because they can manage applications, but the HHC, which is the committee, can't, which is who Jerry was a member of.
Or Hedge.
Yeah.
AJ's? Okay. He was, Jerry, sorry.
Are you
Jerry.
saying the housing committee versus the housing authority?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Jerry was a member of the
And
housing committee.
Thank you.
Anything else that you could add?
About the size of
Okay.
We closed out a number of housing articles a few years ago. I think this is, I don't know, this seems to be like another housekeeping one. It doesn't stop any organization or commission committee from coming back and looking for some more funding.
Reapplying, absolutely. Yep.
This has been tied up since 2008. The Harwich Historical Society, $1,000, was for interpretive signs, which nothing has happened since 2009. The Trails Committee, $16.99. We've asked the Trails Committee, we had them here before us, we asked them, we told them they should spend the money, and they didn't spend the money. So,
And quite frankly, this doesn't preclude anybody from coming back and then making their new request for money.
And the Bikeways Planning Department, $23,000, that was for that sidewalk, pedestrian walkway that was proposed for Bank Street. Correct. Which we had a determination from the coalition that sidewalks could not be funded anyway. So my understanding was that should have been taken care of before, but apparently it wasn't, so it kind of slipped through the cracks. So we're just like I said, and trying to get some more money back in the books for all these other projects that we've been asked to fund.
Joe?
So as a compare and contrast, the first page that we had done, these were projects that have been confirmed as completed, balance left over, makes complete sense to come back to the appropriate funds.
Correct.
And I'm struck by the title of this page, and I don't mean to insult whoever the writer was, because I don't think it was their fault, but it's a generous title to say over 5 years, because when you actually get into it.
I did that, I was
Yeah,
being generous.
exactly, yeah, because what we're looking at is, more than 5 years and a decade in a couple other cases. So we've talked a little bit about that one from 2008, Article 39 for the Housing Authority. So we see that 141,000, and we know we have a proposal for 400,000. Can we look at
I'd
those?
rather not mix those at this point.
Okay,
I'd rather deal with what we have to deal with. Those are new applications we're about to go through.
yep,
If we roll this money back into the pot, back into the bank it came from,
yep.
that money's available for those new applications.
That was going to be my question. Yep, yeah, okay. Yeah, I understand, I think procedurally, we need to take this on its own merits. But the other one that strikes me is Bikeways Committee. So, with this page, was it the same process that the contact was made to different representatives, or
No.
asking? Okay,
No, these are, These are balances that we have continued to ask the various applicants about every time they come in with an annual report.
Yeah. And the answers are, or the
The
responses are?
answers are,
There are some answers that aren't answers.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what I would figure, yeah.
um,
I think the reasonableness application in this case is, first of all, there's a good process in place where we can bring it back to the original funds, and then we can talk about new applications going forward. And if a few of them should meet, hooray.
Again, the one caveat I have to this is Article 41, 30, and 65, I would like to hold until I made that commitment to Mr. Spitz to come in front of us
Oh,
and
okay.
give his spiel.
he didn't want to come tonight?
He wasn't available
Okay.
tonight.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'll try it on a motion if we want for discussion purposes, but I would move approval of the recommendation for CPA-funded projects that have balances over 5 years or greater, excluding the three items.
Article 41, 30, and 65.
Thank you. Yep, so moved.
Yeah, the only question I would have.
Before we get into discussion, it's got to be seconded.
I'll second it.
Okay, that's
And I-
okay.
and I-
All right, Jim, have at it.
I offer that for discussion purposes, so at least we
Yeah.
can get into the nitty-gritty.
Okay, 2 points that I'd sort of like to just throw out on the floor for consideration. One is, I think we would be better off while I agree with doing this, I think we would be better off doing this in the context of having established a policy that if funds are not used within X number of years, except in extenuating circumstances, those funds will be voted on and revert back to, the general fund or however that would be. A second is, I'm wondering whether or not before we take a vote, and this would delay this vote until potentially the next meeting, whether the applicants for these projects should be just put on notice. Now, it sounds like David was put on notice and wants to come in and talk about it, whether or not any of the other applicants would want to come in and talk about it before we do a vote.
That's always the rub.
No, I know, and maybe they wouldn't come in, but they would be on notice, and if they don't come in, then we're gonna vote it.
And I would add, rather than extenuating circumstances, if we do establish a policy of a timeline that a request for an extension, they need to be the applicant needs to be proactive. This is what's going on. I need an extension.
Yeah, no, I would agree
Yeah.
with that.
I don't disagree with that point of view, except at this point in time, these applicants are well aware, or should have been aware, over the period of time, the amounts of money involved. I was contacted by one individual.
Okay.
You're right about the policy, absolutely. And I didn't get a chance to say that at the last meeting, but we are going to address the policy and the plan for the CPC in January. So we can take all those things into consideration. And I hope Dan's here for that discussion. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Kathy, I didn't see you.
I wasn't sure what we were voting on. No, I
We
mean,
were
just
voting on the
had this-
motion.
I know, we just had this discussion though, so could you just repeat the motion?
So that we approved the recommendations,
Nation of,
but holding out the three related to Brooks Academy.
right.
There was discussion about table, but there was no motion
Oh,
to
okay.
table.
Okay. Aye.
So it's unanimous.
No,
I'm sorry, one abstention.
sorry, didn't mean.
It's all right.
So,
So the next meeting, I will invite David to come in and speak to his articles, which are now his articles.
okay.
And then we can make a decision about them then.
I thought we have in our application, under estimated completion date,
Right.
3 years from the release of funds, funds may be rescinded automatically waivers may be sought.
I think most of these were prior to that wording.
Oh, okay.
There was a
Maybe
10-year
not
period, right.
maybe not the 2014, I'm not positive, but prior to that,
Okay.
that wording was not in the application.
Okay, moving
I
on.
understand what you're saying.
But that's to the committee's edification also, that we do have something in our application that
Right.
says we can do this.
Yep.
It's not arbitrary.
First review of the submitted CPC project applications for the board. Where would you like to start?
For a question of clarification, when we say new, it means the ones we all have, right?
The ones we all have.
There's nothing additional or
Nothing
since, okay,
additional.
thank you.
What exactly are you looking for this evening?
To have a discussion on the applicant, on the applications.
David, I would like to just raise a question with regard to whether or not we get too deeply into the substance of the application. Due to the fact that the agenda did not list the applications we were going to discuss, and therefore did not put the applicants on notice that there was going to be a substantive discussion of their application. It was my assumption that what we were going to do was we were going to schedule for the going forward a certain number of applications per meeting, and the applications we were going to discuss per meeting would be listed in the agenda. Right, as opposed to,
Guess what, Jim?
what?
That's what we're doing.
Okay, well then I'm confused as to what we were doing.
Yeah,
Go
I mean,
ahead. You've got the floor, take it.
Okay, well, I mean, then the only thing that we would discuss is which applications would be discussed at what date.
Who and when?
Who and when, yeah.
And time
so
block.
the who and
Time
when
block.
we need to establish. And what I would basically suggest is that there are 16 applications, we divide them into 4 applications per meeting, and we try to group them by substantive area. Now, if I remember from the list, and unfortunately I didn't bring my list with me, but like the first 4 were historic. Is that correct,
first
Kathy?
6.
The first 6 are historic. So then I would suggest that at the first meeting, we discuss the first 4 historic, and then we just go, I mean, these are pretty much grouped by substance, so we just go right down and do set dates for 4 meetings in which we discuss 4 of these applications at each meeting.
And I just
Yeah.
interject that we probably need to decide what our meeting dates are gonna be
Right.
before we do this.
No, I agree, Kathy, and then once we decide, then, and we decide that we're going to, on whatever date, discuss the first, historic ones, we need to contact the applicants to make sure that
Right.
they're available to be present.
Right.
So we'll start with dates.
Okay.
Recommendations from the board.
Well, we have a regular meeting in 2 weeks on November 9th. So we could meet on the 16th, or we could meet on the 30th. I mean,
Okay, let me ask a question before we start setting the dates. David, what is our timeline for coming to a final decision and making a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen for putting on the warrant for town meeting?
I don't actually,
it's February 1st,
February,
Okay.
early February.
but that,
Is that true, Linda?
early February.
February 1st would be a good date,
Okay.
so like February 6th
Okay,
or
then
February 8th or something.
What I
Just
would
February 1.
suggest, excuse me, is that we have 2 meetings in November, 2 meetings in December, have all of them reviewed before the sort of Christmas break, and then have 2 meetings in January where we do our deliberation and vote.
that's a thought, but
This one. So 3 meetings in November, our regular, and then the 16th
No, I think he means just two
I
altogether.
meant two meetings in, no, 2 meetings in November, 2 meetings in December.
Okay.
And then 2 meetings in January for deliberation and vote.
Upon review.
Right, in January.
I think December's gonna pose a problem.
Yeah.
What's that?
Because I know I'm gonna be gone for the last 2 weeks in December.
Well, yeah, I think he's probably looking at the beginning, like December 7th and December 14th is our
Okay.
regular.
That would be fine.
You know, get
And I'm
it
here.
done early. I mean, it is, you know, it is a lot.
Why is there a distinction between what's already scheduled, meaning a regular meeting? Are there different topics?
No, we meet monthly.
Okay.
So those are our standard
So one of
meeting
the two,
times.
so we
One of the
know
two is
that
regular.
one of the two for November is the 9th, one
Right.
of the two, okay. So having said that, I'm not available the week of the 16th, I'll be away in November. But I can do the 9th.
Right. So we could do the 30th of November as an additional meeting.
Mhm.
We could do an additional meeting on December 7th. And then we could do an additional one in January. I don't have a calendar in front of me. I didn't go that far. Oh,
January, well, we can wait, the first, the 4th is a Thursday,
Mhm.
and then the
Yep.
following.
11th is our
11th
regular
is our
meeting.
Here we go.
Right.
She's,
So we could either do January 4th or the 18th. The 11th is our regular meeting, regularly scheduled.
I don't think I can do the 18th. So we've got the 30th.
November 30th,
Yes.
correct, is a potential
Yeah.
date.
And then, oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at December. Where are we?
Okay, November 30th is a potential added meeting.
Yep.
December 7th is a potential added meeting. Okay? Now, into January, we could either meet on January 4th or the 18th. I think the 25th is cutting it a little too close.
Let's do the,
Very close.
Yeah, let's go with the 4th, and when it snows,
Okay.
we'll go on the 11th.
All right.
Because
Yeah,
the
I
4th
would
will be
agree.
canceled. And now that we've said it, it won't be.
Okay, so we'll add the 4th. So the 3 meetings that we'd be adding to the schedule would be November 30th, December 7th, and January 4th.
Jane, how's that for you?
That's fine.
And those are 5 meetings to discuss 16 applications.
Well, I mean, we can try to push more
Right, yeah.
together.
But we've got those 5 to work. Yep.
Well, actually, the 6th, right? Because we have 2 in November, 2 in December, and 2 in January. So
Right.
basically, we're going to have the applicants in November and December to do their presentation and take questions from us.
Yep.
And then we have 2 meetings in January to have sort of our preliminary discussions and deliberations,
and
and then
vote.
another meeting for a vote. Now, if in the first meeting in January, we're all in agreement and everything's fine and we can come to a vote, then maybe
That's
we don't need
discussion.
another.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, the other thing is that we could try to do 5 applicants in a night. You know, grouping them together, for example, if we try to do 5 historic in one night, you know that there's gonna be a person, an applicant or two that can't, I already have a list from someone who sent me when they're not available.
Extra points for planning.
Yeah, so it's not gonna be sort of exactly, you know, even
Yep.
Steven
Right.
here. And we have to consider that we're gonna have some shuffling.
And we're going to offer a time frame as we have in the past.
Right,
Because it
correct.
always takes,
Right, we're gonna
Good
have to really
questions and-
stick to short, concise, and not get a whole
Because we have the
repeat of
apps.
the history of the,
Yep.
of the Brooks Library. I mean, for example, just as an example.
yeah, because we have the apps.
My concern about the time frame is, yes, we should set a time frame. We should try to keep to it with regard to the applicant's presentation. I don't know how many members of the public that will be here, and I don't think we can cut off discussion that comes from the public. And in my experience over the past 2 years, sometimes, you know, we set 15 minutes, we set 20 minutes, and it takes almost an hour to get through one application.
Well, I would say, I think we want to, for the project presenter, it's a shorter, like 5
Right.
minutes, because we've got this. But yes, then we know discussion
Right,
with,
there is going to be discussion both from
Yeah.
the board and from any of the public that are here. And on certain applications, there may be a lot of discussion from the public. Others, there may be none.
Yeah, I would agree.
So that's my concern, getting back to why I even brought that up, was my concern is if we try to do, I think if we try to do more than 5, we are looking into potentially at least 1, maybe 2 of the meetings going a lot later than we would like them to go.
Mhm.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Well, go ahead, Jim.
Are all the meetings that we've described going to be public hearings within the public meetings?
Yes.
So we've got the 2-week notice requirement and all that going on as well?
No.
See, that's where I'm having
Okay.
an
No.
interesting.
We don't
thought
have to
about-
have, I think Jim's talking about public comment.
Right.
Right.
I'm talking
Okay.
public
Not
comment.
a
Because-
public, not a legal notice of a
Yeah,
public
thank
hearing.
you. I'd rather hear public comment than public hearing. But I
Yeah.
would also say, and this is gonna sound like a terrible thing for a town clerk to say, and you said the mics are working and the cameras are on, so I'm gonna make it like Dan said it. But, we can regulate how much public comment there is.
Yes.
So we can certainly allow for it, but I think we give deference to the presenters, obviously allow for public input, but it's not a public hearing where we have to go through all that rigmarole.
Well, again, there's where I'm having an issue. This is for this board to decide.
Correct,
We have the applicants in front of us. It's not a public hearing,
correct.
so it's at the discretion of the chair.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. My only comment to that, Joe, is that while I agree with you legally, we could cut off discussion at any point in time, I think we risk public criticism by cutting off discussion. If there is a lot of discussion on one of the items and we cut it off.
I understand that point. I think to the chairman's point, it's a discretionary call, and I think we have to play it as it lies, but we would be within legal right. We've got 16 applications, and I would be the loudest person defending the actions of the board if we acted in accordance with the manner I've described.
Kathy?
I think that we could take into consideration when we're scheduling them, ones that we think may have more public input to come after the ones that might move more quickly. I do think we need to accept whatever public comment comes our way, but I do think we need to restrain it a bit. So I think, at your discretion,
I'll make that decision at the
a
time.
half hour goes
So-
by and we have, 3 other applicants, we may say, let's keep it on point
As a
and wrap it
rule,
up.
as we went through this process, there was a time limit given to the applicants. Is that going to continue? What's the board's pleasure?
All right, we gave them 10 minutes last year, I think.
I would recommend you shorten it to 5. Again, we've got the applications. We will have read through them.
Bullet points.
Yeah, because what the process we're talking about is they get to tell us something, but our process is then having the dialogue, the conversation and the questions. So, yep, we've got the materials, you give us the bullet points, and the questions that we have will come up and engender further conversation.
So-
Just a point of clarification, that's 5 minutes for their presentation.
For their presentation, not
Not
So-
the-
discussion,
right.
questions.
So
Absolutely.
5-minute
Yep.
presentation and
I'm not
then
going to shut you off.
a question,
Feel free, David.
a 5-minute presentation, a question and answer period of perhaps, I'm just trying to create a time frame here
right.
so we let people
Yep.
know.
Well, if you're going to give the applicants 5 minutes to have a discussion, we give the floor possibly 5 minutes to have a good discussion.
You're talking about public comment or you're talking about the board?
Public comment.
I think it would take
If we-
long. I don't think
if-
that's realistic.
If
I
we're
don't
going
think
that
that's
direction.
I think it's 20 minutes. We should book 20 minutes per application, but the presenter has 5 minutes to,
I'm not willing to do that, Sue.
Okay.
That's an incredible amount of time to get buried in minutia.
Okay.
We have the applications in front of us. They should make the presentation to whatever the applicant is. It's not the general public that's making the application. It's an individual unit that's making it.
so
So-
you're saying we should have our questions, I see what you're saying, our questions, it's about the dialogue between the applicant
And us,
and
and
us.
the board.
And understanding there could be public comment, but 20 minutes is too much, okay?
Okay, but
Dan.
Cindy, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dan.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Cindy, my understanding of what you were saying is that the totality of the discussion of the application, including the presentation, including the board discussion, and the public
Yes,
comment should
would-
be 20 minutes.
20 minutes, that's what we
And I
should,
think it's unrealistic to have it any shorter than that.
okay?
I mean, in a lot of the ones that I've been in over the past year, some of them have gone close to an hour, which I think is way too long. I think a half an hour should be the absolute longest, and that's why I said sort of like 4 per meeting, because then what you do is but I'd be in favor of either the 20 minutes with the idea that the chairman.
All encompassing.
Yeah, for
may-
booking
may-
purposes.
For booking purposes, yes, so that if there is valid other discussion, the chairman could extend that. But if we do 20 minutes with a little bit of spillover and the fact that we may need a little bit of time for administrative matters for the committee, that creates a 2-hour meeting.
Okay.
Dan.
I agree.
Just a point of clarification, I don't think this has ever occurred in the past, but it may this year. After the applicant makes the presentation and we pose our questions, if there's somebody in the audience who wants to make a statement, do we allow that?
Well, it's up to the chair to recognize him
Okay.
or her.
But
And
that-
that's what I'm thinking
that's
is
what
the
public
20 or
comment part is,
30-minute
yeah.
time frame would
That would-
account for.
That would be included.
That's my that's 20 or 30 minutes.
Like, just as an example, if every homeowner on Hinckley's Pond came to give us their comments, we would be there all evening. So we're gonna need to limit some of the public comment.
Yes.
Perhaps to something we might not have heard before.
Okay.
So my understanding then is, for scheduling purposes, we're gonna tell the applicants we're scheduling in 20-minute increments, 5-minute presentation to be concise, bullet points, we'll have read the applications, and then 15 minutes for question and answer and public comment. And we know that it could run a little bit over at the discretion of the chair. Is that,
No, that's not correct.
oh,
I want the ability, and I'm taking the ability that after we have the information delivered by the applicant, that we move on to the next applicant without listening to public comments. In the context that you just put, you're not allowing the chair to make that decision. You're gonna put a situation where you're making a motion, and I don't agree with that motion.
okay, okay, then I must have misunderstood then. So you don't want them to be able to have a 20-minute increment?
They may be able to have a 20-minute increment,
Okay,
but I want control over that.
okay.
In previous meetings that I've been in with another entity, I've seen and I've witnessed a lot of infighting going on with applicants in the positions that they take in opposition to what you're trying to do or what an applicant's trying to do. That's where the chair steps in and cuts that debate off.
Okay,
So you would propose,
So I need the ability to do that. And if we put a motion on the floor where we're saying that the public has 20 minutes or 15 minutes access, I don't
okay.
have the ability to do that.
Okay, so would you prefer I just take out the words public comment and propose 20-minute increments for the applicant's 5-minute presentation and the remainder of the time
That's fine. We'll leave it at that. Then if there is
as
information out there that we
for a
need to-
dialogue? How about just for a dialogue?
Dialogue, then
Clarify in my mind, we go through the 4 applicants that are scheduled, they're given 20 minutes to present. We go through the 4 applicants. After that, you provide the opportunity for public comment?
they have 5 minutes to present.
Well, I meant 20 minute scheduling.
The
each-
scheduling
20
is
minutes for
different
each
than what
applicant.
you're trying, I know what you're trying to get to.
Are you just for clarification, do you not want to have public comment during the presentations? Or do you just want to have the
Quite
option?
frankly, this is for the board to decide. The public comment has already been taking place. That's within the application. The applicants were supposed to go out and get the information from the public as a request of the application.
But we've always allowed in the past public support to be verbalized.
Right, that's the past.
Okay.
Is that part of the 20 minutes, or is that after all the applicants?
That would be part of the 20 minutes.
That would be part of the 20
Yes.
minutes? Okay.
So if there's someone in the audience, if Bob or Linda are in the audience and they want to ask a question, I don't have an issue with that. But if there's going to be ongoing debates, that's where I want to cut it off.
Okay. Where
And that will fall on me, not the board.
yeah, no, I mean, I think I agree with you to a certain extent, David, that you need to have the ability to control the discussion so that whatever discussion is going on is productive discussion. And that it's actual comments on the application, not getting off into some other areas or other problems or making personal attacks or things of that nature. I mean, when I was chairman of the planning board, there were times that I had to ask people to, leave the podium because they were getting completely, off point. So I realize your ability to do that is key to being chairman of the committee. However, I think we have to allow the opportunity for valid public comment. And I think what Kathy is trying to do is, if I remember from from some discussions we have had in the past, that some of the applicants would like to sort of know approximately when they're going to be starting their presentations. So if they're the last one on the list and we have a 6 o'clock meeting and we have 20-minute implements or 20-minute sections, then they know they don't really have to get here until about 7 o'clock in order to be prepared. So I think what Kathy was doing with the scheduling is trying to address that concern, not cut off your ability to make sure that whatever discussion there is productive discussion.
Okay,
So my understanding then is 20-minute increments, 5-minute presentation, and the remaining time for a dialogue between the board, the applicant, and just leave it at that?
that's fine.
Maybe just put it as discussion, period.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, all right. Okay, so in just looking at the list, we know that there's a few that are not gonna really take that long. I would imagine, this is just from knowing what these are about, that the historic number 2 and historic number 6 are not gonna take that long. And we know that 4 and 5 have to be talked about together. Unfortunately, the person representing Historic 1 won't be able to be at the November 9th meeting. So I might suggest that we do Historic 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and just, I know that's 5, but since 2 of them are gonna be talked about
Kathy,
together.
question,
Yeah.
excuse me, who's the person that's representing historic?
Charlene. They're going to, there's a number of people that are participating in the 2017 Cape Housing Initiative
Okay,
Institute, and that is, the workshop is on, that final workshop is on that evening.
thank you.
So,
Do you want that in the form of a motion? It makes sense to me.
well, would I have your permission to do like the 5 historic,
Except for one,
for the one night? Okay.
except for one.
Well, no, there's 6, I'm just 5 of them I want to do.
There's 6,
Historic
Kathy
2
wants
through
to do.
6.
I would say, Kathy, whatever you can schedule. I don't want to make
Yeah, I
it
know.
too difficult for you.
And I'm sure that there might be a case where something won't be able to do. That's why I'm sort of overreaching a little bit.
No,
Please and
you're
thank
not.
you.
You-
Yes,
that's fine.
exactly.
That's
Okay.
fine.
You're nailing it.
Maybe view the 4 per night as a guideline instead
Yes.
of a
Yep.
strict rule.
Absolutely.
And we
Okay.
trust
And leave
your,
it at your discussion to figure, or your discretion to sort of figure out what's gonna work.
Okay,
That's fine.
okay. Okay. All right,
All right, that's the first.
all right. Do you need a motion for this, or?
I
I don't think so.
I move that we allow Kathy to keep doing what she's doing, 'cause she's doing so well.
Second?
All in favor?
You have to abstain.
Okay.
If you want to, yeah.
I've done this a number of years already, so we seem to get everybody there.
Herding
Okay,
cats.
okay.
So we're set.
We will,
Do you want to discuss any of the others
um,
as far as the timeframes are concerned? No? Okay, that's fine.
I think if we set the schedule now, and I'll work on it in the next couple of days, it'll be more than enough time for everybody to be prepared.
Well, moving on, committee member updates. There aren't any. Old business.
well, I would just add
okay, Cindy, I'm
that,
sorry.
well, Kathy mentioned the Housing Institute. Harwich has a very good representation in the entire, for the entire Cape, so I'm very, very proud of the town.
That's good.
Probably
That's
8,
good.
I think 7 or 8 registrants, so it's been great.
That's good, that's good. That was also open to anybody who was on the Community Preservation Committee to start attending
Any,
some of those.
any elected,
I did see that in the
Yes.
newspaper.
Yeah.
I was tempted to go.
and I comment
Handle
from being with Housing Assistance Corporation, well, on the Housing Committee.
I think what you were referring to was our, our 3 members that
Oh,
we
I
don't.
see- I see what you're saying.
Yes, yeah, which we have no update, is what you're saying.
Which you're one of.
Well, no, I'm just saying, we don't have any update
I'm only
on
teasing.
any of the missing,
That's.
But we are
spots.
missing representation, aren't we? We're
Right.
missing housing, because I'm elected,
conservation.
conservation.
So Housing Committee, Housing Authority, and Conservation are the 3 areas that we're missing representation.
Housing Authority,
Housing Committee.
Conservation, Housing Committee.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So how do we fill those? Is it through the selectmen
It's
or?
already under
Okay.
discussion.
Perfect.
It's a tough time for somebody to come in. I mean, they're looking at like 6 meetings plus. We're saying, get that, I don't want to volunteer. But,
Okay. Old business, policy discussion. What I was going to suggest in the last meeting that we didn't have was we put the policy discussion off until January. Then we'll get through all the applications. We'll start policy discussion on what a policy actually is and how do we implement it. And the same thing with the CPC plan itself, to continue on with that. But we need key components to that. One of them being conservation. And the selectmen have been made aware of that. So,
well, you probably want to do this in February, because it looks like January is going to
well,
be tight.
again, what's the board's,
David, when you say we need conservation, are you talking about the conservation plan?
there needs to be representation from
Oh,
conservation
representation, oh, okay,
on the board.
okay.
Well, and I would echo housing as well, a
I agree.
formal, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I would suggest that we wait until February.
Okay.
Get
That's
through
fine,
this stuff and
that's
then-
up to the board. Okay, past CPC funding projects closed, time parameters. We have gotten into a little of that. There's some more information on that. And I've got to choose my words carefully in how I describe this. As I've gone back and looked through the information, the documentation of the CPC funding, there's been a lot of miscommunication and errors, is the way I'm going to put it. There are accounts that were used, money was shifted from account to account. There was some funding on invoices that shouldn't have been paid. There's a lot of discrepancy within the finance department. That's being corrected. At some point, I have to an agenda and an item where the board has a discussion on how it wants to handle the articles that get funded by the CPC and accountability for the money being spent. And I'm gonna put that on the next agenda, and I know it's gonna be a lot. And I'll give you more
February
details
agenda.
on that.
And are you mostly referring to moving forward from this point on, or are you also referring to past articles that have been
No,
funded?
that information is, we're gonna move forward. We need to have a policy and a plan that's all inclusive, including tracking the funding of the articles of CPC. For an example, when rec comes through, when rec submits an article to CPC for funding, we get a ton of invoices that come in. We go out, we do all the spec sheets on it. We have the information all at hand. When the work is done, when the work gets completed, at whatever stage it is, invoices submitted and they get paid. There are at least 2 signatures on each one of those invoices before it goes to the finance committee. The finance department, I'm sorry. That would be the chairman and the treasurer. That would be Eric and me. Not only that, the rest of the board sees those invoices to see how the money's being spent. It gets tracked. Then the invoices are sent over to finance for them to be paid. With the CPC money, that's not happening. And the monies are getting misallocated. The finance department is in the process of correcting that. There have been outside agencies, there have been other entities within the town that when they get funding through CPC and the invoices go through them, whoever the project applicants are, they submit invoices. They submit invoices for everything, not necessarily what's been qualified by the CPC. The most recent one I've dealt with is Kroll's Bond. There was an $1,100 invoice that came to be paid by CPC. Fortunately, Kathy, with her due diligence in what she had tracked, there was a remaining balance that was way under what the invoice was. So, before they had been into the CPC admin
Sorry.
expenses to pay those things,
Excuse me.
that's
It
in.
went into the admin bucket?
Oh, yeah,
Oh, just make sure I heard that.
yeah.
Oh,
So that's under the new finance director, that's been corrected. So we need to track the funding of CPC through the finance director. In fact, we're setting up, between the director and I, we're setting up a process that, I don't know if Jan will be able to do it, but we'll have access to the finance department of the town.
A general question.
Go ahead.
Who determines whether a particular expenditure is allowable and applicable to a particular project?
It should be the finance director, because that's where
You
the,
said should be.
yeah, I can't tell you what happened in the past. That's, again, I'm moving forward. It should be the finance director. Go ahead.
Shouldn't it be the chair of this particular committee?
I'm not getting into what happened, we're
No,
moving
no,
forward.
but I'm saying
Yes,
moving
you're
forward,
yes,
I mean, we're the
yes.
ones who understand
The
the
answer is yes.
applications and what the funding was supposed to go for.
Right.
So you really need the sign off of the committee, somebody in the
Chair.
committee and
The chair, right.
finance.
It doesn't necessarily have to be the committee, it should be the committee chair. You're absolutely right. So. Moving forward. Go ahead.
David, I have a question related to that. It may not be directly on point, and you may not have gotten to this point with your analysis yet. But my basic question is, do we have enough funds to fund all the applications
No.
that are in front of us? Okay.
I was gonna
Do
get
you,
into that.
do you either now or will you be able to get a handle
Yes.
on that, you know, say before we have to make the decisions in
Yes.
January? Okay.
Yes. There is a total of expenditures, and if you put the packet in front of you, you can add them up.
Yeah.
And based on Bob's spreadsheet from previous years,
Mhm.
you
We
can
did
see.
total them. 3.5 million of requests.
Right,
We've never had that much money.
right, yeah.
So yes, there's going to be a lot of.
But whether we have 1.5 or 2.5, I don't know.
So, let me just sort of throw something out on the table for discussion. I assume that in reviewing these applications, we would not consider the availability of funding, but the application on its merit. And then in January, when we're taking a look at what applications we are willing to improve, we would then take a look at whether or not we have enough funds to fund all of them. And if not, then we would have to go into some type of prioritization discussion.
I would agree.
We do have a,
See, that feels the cleanest.
Right.
we do have something in our guidelines that does say that if there are more than one application in a particular area, that we will ask whoever's in that area to prioritize. So we're gonna
Okay.
need the town to prioritize for us what they see as their, highest priority in terms of the number of applications they've
Yeah,
submitted.
well, that will certainly help.
Now, I have a question about that, and I'll pose this to Joe. Is it the town's responsibility to prioritize their own applications, rather than have the CPC say to them, we need you to prioritize your applications? I know, there you go.
Well, on the spreadsheet that we first got, or the Word document, I think, when you and I talked about it, I turned it into a spreadsheet and you confirmed it for me, thank you. What I had done before they had the applications was gone through and looked at the applicants. And one applicant says Town of Harwich. The next one says a department that is known to be the Town of Harwich. So for me, as a new member here, but having served in this capacity elsewhere, that's what I wanted to figure out is what is truly municipal, what is truly Town of Harwich versus community partners that might be out there, like a Habitat for Humanity, and that's the quickest one that I saw. So for me, I'm looking at that saying there is the Town of Harwich in total, as well as the general population that could and should benefit from this. So I don't know what the answer is, but I know what my personal preference is. I don't know if that helps you, but
14 out of 16 of these
yeah,
actually
exactly.
come under the umbrella
What I
of
would
the
call
town of
Town of
Harwich.
Harwich, exactly.
Okay,
yeah.
the reason that they're listed differently here is this is just what the application
Well,
says.
no, I understand.
No, I'm
I
just
absolutely
saying.
understand,
Right.
absolutely.
That's what I'm
And for me, it was not an
saying.
internal thing, nor would
Yeah.
I blame the applicant, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Oh, no,
But-
no.
But I think if you look at it holistically, let's be honest,
But if I think what we're saying too, though, is if there's, in a particular category, okay, if there are 4 applications that fall into the town of Harwich's umbrella, we would like them to prioritize.
Absolutely, right.
Does that make sense?
Because the town's competing against itself in that one category, absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I don't know if I would suggest that they, prioritize one category over another, but I'm saying that
A
within an
project.
area,
Intra-category, absolutely,
yes,
yeah.
that's what I would suggest.
But that's up to them to decide. That's up for them to come before this board.
Oh, sure, I would agree with that. I would just add that if they don't, they they are now in the perilous position of leaving it up to us, and
Mm-hmm.
there's only so many dollars for so many projects.
So is it appropriate for this board to reach out? Is it appropriate for the chairman to reach out?
The way I would answer it is it's not in violation of any laws, public records, open meeting law, or things like that.
What's the board's pleasure?
I think it's in our guidelines, right?
What's in our
Jim?
Prioritize.
Yeah, David,
evaluation criteria,
okay. While I think it's perfectly appropriate for you to reach out to Chris or whoever and say, okay, of these 4 historic, applications that the town has put in, which are you the most interested in and prioritize? However, I think this committee needs to reserve the right to make a final determination, because this committee, for the purposes of the Community Preservation Act, may feel that the priorities are slightly different than Chris sees them from his position as town administrator.
Good
And I
point.
think it's this committee's fiduciary responsibility to make the decision that it feels is correct.
And I would agree. I would say after, we go through, and if it's discussion in January and we're
Right.
struggling, then we do reach out and say, these 3 projects are important, but there's not enough funding, and we're all tied, we're,
At that point in time.
Yeah, so to summarize, David, I think it's perfectly appropriate for you to reach out. However, I wouldn't reach out in the context that whatever you prioritize is what we're going to decide. We will certainly take that under consideration.
Right. Absolutely.
in our decision.
Absolutely. I'm just trying to follow the bouncing
Yeah.
ball, that's all.
Yeah.
Dan?
Just for edification of the committee, in our project selection criteria, we have criteria that we, at least in our selection criteria handout, it identifies criteria that may be used to evaluate projects, and they involve feasibility, urgency, affordability, consistency with recent town meeting actions, preservation of town access, and yada yada. So I just bring that to
We have the
everybody's
ability,
attention.
right. Okay.
That's in the sunshine.
Okay.
All right, we have discussed the next meeting. Agenda points are gonna be topics for discussion, so we start bringing people in.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We had talked at one time about having perhaps members, if they were interested, and willing, to maybe reach out to some of the applicants where there might be some additional questions before even they came for a presentation. I don't know how anybody feels about that, or do you
Discuss
want
that
to
in
wait?
the context of before they even submitted the application.
Yeah, that's,
That
we're
we
kind of
would
in a
be able
timestamp.
to talk to us, but now we're pretty much on our way.
and it might muddy the water. It may look,
Yeah, I agree
That's
with Dan and Cindy. I think our original discussion of that was in the pre-application process.
Okay.
And I agree with Cindy, at this stage where we're having sort of formal meetings to review with the applicant, it might appear to prejudice some of the applications.
Okay.
Yeah, and there is a contact list contained within the application packet itself.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right.
Yep.
We always put that in there, nobody
Yep.
contacts us.
Yeah.
All right, well, can I just
or on the
ask?
fly.
Go ahead.
One more thing. I don't know if everybody had a chance to glance at some of the applications,
Oh, I did.
but for example, there may have been an application I saw that I know that I want some additional information that I am positive that a presenter would not have with them. So I want to know if it's okay if I reach out ahead of time to get that question answered for myself.
Is this under open space?
No.
No.
Any thoughts?
I will take the
Yeah, I
lead
mean,
of the board on that one. Jim?
Yeah, I mean, my thought is that it's going a step beyond, because we're now into a very public process, but that, I think what we've done in the past is if we need additional information on any item, we request it by a certain date.
Yeah.
And that basically, you know, I think we would need that additional information before we begin our deliberations in January.
Yep.
So we may
Okay.
request that information before the end of December. The other thing that I would request, and this is just a personal concern of mine, is that once we establish the list of actual applications that are being heard at, what's the next meeting date, November 9th?
Yes.
On November 9th, that if we could just get that out to all members as soon as possible so that
Sure.
the members can prioritize their review of the application.
Oh, of course,
Yeah.
of course,
I
of course, of course.
You mean you haven't just,
haven't committed the ball to memory as yet, David.
Okay,
That comes next week.
got that.
okay.
Just a general comment. I
Go
went
ahead,
through
Jim.
the applications. And there was one that made reference to an attached budget. There was nothing there. But I found that, at least my perception was that I'm not sure where some of these numbers are coming from in terms of their requested amounts.
There was one application that I actually contacted an individual who did the review on the application, could put the numbers together. And I looked at the application, all the documentation was there except for the numbers.
You see, I think, excuse me, Dave.
It goes back to what you,
Yeah,
I
think that- I
understand.
think at this stage, those are the questions we ask when the applicants come in front of us, and that's the additional information we ask.
Mhm.
I was thinking though, Jim, that if Kathy's gonna contact, that they should be informed to be prepared
No.
to.
I
think
actually,
we need to do it in a public process at this stage.
Jim,
Yeah.
I have to correct myself. At the last non-meeting, any information I have, I passed out, and that documentation was there. So
Okay.
I've just covered myself. is
Wouldn't
what I
it be
just did.
appropriate for Kathy to say, be prepared to explain where your numbers came from?
No. That has to be a question that's asked in a public meeting.
Well, it would be.
Not if Kathy's doing it over the telephone.
Oh, yeah.
when she's,
That's
I
why I
just send
just
them
pulled that
emails.
information up.
I just send
We
emails, I
just
don't talk to
said-
anybody.
We just said that, or Kathy at least proposed, should we reach out to these applicants? And if they have any questions or comments or what have you, if they need any assistance.
Well, I always put in the email, if you have any questions, feel free to call me or a representative of the committee. I mean, that's just a little caveat, I always put in there, ask, you know, but you're talking about being proactive rather than
Proactive.
reactive, which
Be
is something
prepared
we've
to
discussed
explain where
many,
your
many
numbers came from,
times.
that's all.
That's.
As long as it's in every message, I have no problem with that. Everybody gets the same.
no, we're into a public process now, and I think those are exactly the type of questions we need to ask when they come in front of us. We need to ask for that additional information, and that's the additional information that I think we're talking about needs to be submitted by a certain date so that we can make our deliberations.
And so, a general sort of, little blurb on the email, be prepared,
Yeah, I
Answer questions, but no further.
but
than
nothing
that.
else. Okay.
Yeah.
just know 5 minutes.
5 minutes, and then there'll be discussion in which there will be questions asked of the applicant regarding the substance of the application.
Joe,
I'm good for right now. Thank you.
Cindy,
Good.
Dan,
You okay? with-
any more?
I don't necessarily agree, but, just for the sake of moving on.
I'm fine.
Jim, Kathy,
Good.
anything else? Jim? You part of the discussion?
No.
You all set with all the information? Okay, is there a
Uh,
motion?
Do we have to pay Jan? Do we have to pay you any money? Is that,
It's different now,
oh, it's
Yeah,
different. Oh,
it's
sorry.
me. It's my
Okay.
signature.
Okay.
per town request.
Okay. Good.
Anything
And I don't
else?
get paid for last time.
No, I know. I just didn't want anything hanging
Did you
out there.
wanna do this? Thank you then. Did you wanna,
We already did that.
okay.
Anything else, folks? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
So if you
All in
can't,
favor?
if you can't sleep, you know what to read.
And do we have a preference to what room we get? Does it matter?
Well,
we're-
shoot.
we're-